Everyone thinks inheriting 33 million would bring a family together. They're wrong. Dead wrong. My name is Margaret Thompson, and I'm about to tell you how money can turn your own child into a stranger. How 40 years of sacrifice can be erased with a single sentence. And how sometimes the people you love most are the ones who hurt you deepest. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. I was sitting in St. Mary's Hospital, holding my husband Robert's hand as machines beeped around us. 43 years of marriage, and it was all coming to an end. His breathing was shallow, labored. The doctors had given us days, maybe hours. "Maggie," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "take care of yourself when I'm gone. Promise me." I squeezed his hand tighter. "Don't talk like that, you're going to be fine." But we both knew better. The cancer had spread too far, too fast. 3 months from diagnosis to this moment, it felt like a cruel joke. "Where's Jessica?" he asked, looking toward the door. "Our daughter. 28 years old, Harvard MBA, everything we'd ever dreamed she could become. She'd visited twice since his diagnosis, twice in 3 months. Both times she'd spent more time on her phone than talking to her dying father. She's busy with work, I lied, the same lie I'd been telling myself for years. She'll be here soon. Robert's eyes met mine. In that look, I saw something that chilled me, a sadness that had nothing to do with his illness. "Maggie, about the will, Shh, rest now." But he pressed on, each word an effort. "I've left everything to Jessica, the house, the business, the investments, everything." My heart stopped. "Robert, what about—" "You'll be taken care of, I promise. Read the will carefully when the time comes." Those were among his last coherent words. He passed away 2 days later on a Thursday evening while I held his hand and Jessica was in meetings she couldn't reschedule. I'd given up everything for this family. Everything. When I was 25, I had a promising career as a marketing director at a growing firm in downtown Chicago. I was good at what I did, really good. My boss had hinted at a promotion to regional manager. I had my own apartment, my own car, my own life. Then I met Robert Thompson at a conference in 1981. He was 30, charming, with dreams of starting his own construction company. We dated for 6 months before he proposed, and I said yes without hesitation. I was head over heels in love. "Maggie, I want to build something together," he'd said the night he proposed. "A business, a family, a life, but I need a partner who's all in." So I became all in. I quit my job the week before our wedding. "It's temporary," I told myself, "just until the business gets off the ground." The business, Thompson Construction, started in our garage. I handled the books, the marketing, the client relations, all while Robert focused on the actual construction work. 18-hour days were normal. We lived on ramen noodles and determination. Jessica came along 3 years later. I remember holding her in the hospital, this perfect little human we'd created, and thinking my heart might burst from happiness. Robert cried when he first held her, actual tears streaming down his face. "She's going to have everything we never had," he whispered. "The best schools, the best opportunities, everything." And we made sure she did. While other families took vacations, we invested in Jessica's future. Piano lessons, ballet, tennis, tutoring. If it could give her an advantage, we provided it. I drove her to every lesson, every practice, every competition. I was room mother for 6 years straight. I helped with homework until high school when it became too advanced for me. The construction business grew. From that garage operation to a company with 50 employees and contracts worth millions. I was there for every milestone, every crisis, every triumph. When Robert was stressed about a big project, I'd stay up all night helping him figure out logistics. When he was sick with the flu, I ran job sites myself. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Maggie," he used to say. "You're the foundation of everything." I believed him. I believed we were building something together. Jessica excelled at everything. Valedictorian in high school, full scholarship to Harvard for her undergraduate degree, then Harvard Business School. She was everything we'd dreamed. Intelligent, accomplished, beautiful. Robert would beam with pride whenever anyone asked about her. "That's my daughter," he'd say. "She's going to run Fortune 500 companies someday." But somewhere along the way, something changed. The calls became less frequent. The visits became shorter. When she graduated from Harvard Business School, she moved to New York for a consulting job. "It's a great opportunity, Mom," she'd said. "I need to focus on my career right now." I understood. I'd made the same choice, once, albeit in reverse. The last time Jessica came home was Christmas 2 years ago. She spent 3 days with us, but I felt like I was entertaining a stranger. She kept checking her phone, taking calls, seeming generally annoyed by our small-town lifestyle. "Mom, you should really update this kitchen," she'd said, looking around dismissively. "It's so dated." "It's the same kitchen where I made your birthday cakes for 18 years, I'd replied, hurt. She'd shrugged. "Exactly my point." When Robert got sick, I called her immediately. "Jessica, it's Dad. He has pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Silence on the other end. Then, "How long does he have?" "The doctors aren't sure. Months, maybe less." "Okay, I'll try to visit when I can." Try to visit. "Your father is dying and you'll try to visit." She came twice. The first time was in August, a week after the diagnosis. She stayed for exactly 24 hours, spent maybe 3 hours total with Robert, the rest of the time in her old room making work calls. "This is a really bad time for me career-wise," she explained when I asked her to stay longer. "I'm up for partner at the firm." The second visit was in September, another day trip. This time, she seemed more interested in the house than her father. "Have you guys updated your wills recently?" she asked casually while Robert napped. "What kind of question is that?" "A practical one, Mom. Dad's business is worth a lot of money. The house, the investments. Someone needs to handle all that." I stared at my daughter, this stranger who looked like the little girl I'd raised. "Your father isn't dead yet, Jessica. I'm just being realistic." Realistic, that's what she called it. After Robert's funeral, Jessica stayed for exactly 3 days, just long enough for the will reading. Mr. Harrison, Robert's lawyer, had called us both to his office downtown. I sat in the same chair where Robert and I had updated our wills 5 years earlier, back when everything seemed normal. "This is pretty straightforward," Mr. Harrison said, adjusting his glasses. Robert was very clear about his wishes. Jessica leaned forward, suddenly very attentive. "To my beloved daughter, Jessica, I leave the house at 412 Maple Street, including all furnishings and contents. I also leave her the entirety of Thompson Construction, valued at approximately $28 million, plus all investment accounts, savings, and other liquid assets, totaling approximately $5 million. Jessica's eyes lit up. $33 million. More money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. I felt the blood drain from my face. "What about—" Mr. Harrison held up a hand. "Seppo, there are additional provisions, but let me finish this section first." But Jessica wasn't listening to additional provisions. She was practically glowing, calculating, planning. I could see the wheels turning in her head. "When do I get access to the accounts?" she asked. "There's a process, but we can begin immediately," Mr. Harrison replied. "However, I do need to explain the conditions." "Conditions?" Jessica's smile faltered slightly. "Yes, there are specific requirements regarding—" "Can we handle those details later?" Jessica interrupted, standing up. "I have a flight back to New York in 3 hours." Mr. Harrison looked confused. "Mrs. Thompson, don't you want to hear—" "I'm sure it's fine," Jessica said dismissively. "Just email me the paperwork." And just like that, she was gone, left me sitting in that lawyer's office holding Robert's wedding ring while she rushed off to catch a plane. I should have insisted on hearing the rest of the will that day. Should have made her stay and listen. But I was in shock, grieving, barely able to process what had just happened. The reality hit me over the next few days. Jessica called a few times, but not to check on me. She wanted to know about bank account numbers, property deeds, business contracts. When I tried to talk about Robert, about how much I missed him, she'd quickly change the subject back to logistics. "Mom, I need you to gather all the financial documents," she said during one call. "Everything Dad had should be in his office." "Jessica, I just buried my husband. Can't this wait?" "Time is money, Mom. The business can't just sit there without proper management." Time is money. Those words echoed in my head for days. A week after the funeral, Jessica came back to the house. Not to comfort me, not to reminisce about Robert, but to assess the situation, as she put it. I watched her walk through our home like a real estate appraiser, making notes on her phone, taking pictures. She spent an hour in Robert's office, going through files. "Mom, we need to talk," she said that evening over dinner. I'd made her favorite meal, lasagna with garlic bread, the same recipe I'd used for her birthday dinners throughout childhood. She barely touched it. "I've been thinking about the logistics of everything," she began, not meeting my eyes. "The house, the business, all of Dad's assets. What about them?" "Well, they're mine now, and I need to make some practical decisions about how to handle everything." Something in her tone made my stomach clench. "What kind of decisions?" Jessica took a deep breath, like she was preparing for a difficult business presentation. "Mom, I'm going to be direct because I think that's kindest in the long run." Kindest. She thought what came next would be kind. "This house is too big for one person. You're 67 years old and maintaining a 4-bedroom house doesn't make financial sense." "This is my home, Jessica. Our home." "It was Dad's home. Now it's my home. And I think it would be better for everyone if you found somewhere more appropriate for your needs." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You want me to move out?" "I want you to transition to a living situation that makes more sense for your stage of life." Stage of life. Like I was a piece of furniture that had outlived its usefulness. "Jessica, I've lived in this house for 25 years. Your father and I built our life here. You grew up here." "Exactly. I grew up here, past tense. Now I need to think about the future." "What future? You live in New York. You haven't been home more than a handful of times in the past 5 years. Her jaw tightened. "My plans might change. And regardless, it's my decision to make now." I stared at my daughter, searching for any trace of the little girl who used to curl up in my lap when she had nightmares. The girl who made me Mother's Day cards with crayon hearts and misspelled words of love. "Where exactly do you expect me to go?" Jessica had clearly thought this through. "There are some nice senior living communities in the area, or you could find a small apartment, something more manageable." Senior living communities. She was talking about warehousing me with other discarded parents. "Jessica, I don't need managing. I need my home." "Mom, be realistic. You can't afford to maintain this place on Social Security alone." "Your father left me nothing?" "He left you Social Security and Medicare. That's something." Something. 43 years of marriage, and that was something. "I helped build everything your father had," I said quietly. "The business, this house, everything. I gave up my career, my dreams, everything to support his vision. And that was your choice." "Your choice. Like I'd chosen to sacrifice my life for fun. It was our choice. We were partners." "You were Dad's wife. Now you're his widow. The partnership ended when he died." The coldness in her voice was breathtaking. This wasn't grief talking or stress or temporary insanity. This was calculated, planned. "I need time to think about this," I said. "Actually, Mom, I need an answer pretty quickly. I have some opportunities that require moving fast." "What kind of opportunities?" "There's interest in selling the business, and this house could be worth quite a bit if we renovate and flip it." "We?" She said we, but she meant I. "You want to sell your father's business? The company he spent 30 years building? It's not Dad's business anymore. It's mine, and keeping it doesn't make financial sense for someone in my position." Someone in her position. Someone too important. too sophisticated, too successful to be bothered with her father's legacy. That night, I lay in the bed I'd shared with Robert for over 2 decades, staring at the ceiling. His side was cold, empty. Everything felt cold and empty. I thought about calling Jessica, trying to reason with her, appealing to whatever was left of the daughter I'd raised. But I knew it wouldn't matter. She'd made up her mind before she ever came home. The next morning, Jessica was already dressed and packed when I came downstairs. "I've made a decision," I said. She looked up from her phone expectantly. "I'm not leaving." Her expression hardened. "Mom, I really don't want to make this difficult." "Then don't. This is my house now, legally, officially, completely mine. I'm trying to handle this situation with dignity, but I don't have to." The threat was clear. She could make me leave whether I wanted to or not. "This is where I belong, Jessica. This is where your father and I built our life together. Dad is dead." The words hung in the air like a slap. Blunt, cruel, final. "I know he's dead," I whispered. "I held his hand when he died. I planned his funeral. I buried my husband and my best friend in the same day." "Then you know this sentimentality isn't helping anyone." Sentimentality. My grief was sentimentality. Jessica walked to the kitchen island and picked up a set of keys, my keys to the house. "I'll give you 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live," she said. "That's more than generous." "Jessica, please." She turned to face me, and what I saw in her eyes broke something inside me that I don't think ever healed. "Mom, let me be very clear about something. Dad is gone. The life you had is over. You're useless to me now, and frankly, you're in my way. Find somewhere else to die, because it's not going to be here." Find somewhere else to die. Your own daughter. The child you carried for 9 months, raised for 18 years, supported and loved and sacrificed for through everything. Those were the words she chose to use. I stood there in the kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals for her, in the house where I'd nursed her through childhood illnesses and celebrated every achievement, and watched her walk out the door without looking back. The silence that followed was deafening, not just quiet, empty. Like all the love and laughter in life had been sucked out of the walls. I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where Jessica had done homework while I helped her with math problems she found frustrating, where we'd played board games on rainy afternoons, where Robert and I had planned birthday parties and Christmas mornings and family vacations we couldn't really afford, but made happen anyway. 2 weeks. She'd given me 2 weeks to dismantle 40 years of my life. I should have been angry, should have been furious, should have been planning my own cruel response. But I wasn't. I was just hollow, empty. Like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that made me Margaret Thompson, leaving behind just a shell that used to be a wife and mother. The next few days passed in a blur. I went through the motions of living, eating, sleeping, showering, but nothing felt real. I kept expecting Robert to walk through the door, or Jessica to call and apologize, or something to happen that would make this nightmare make sense. Instead, Jessica had the locks changed. I came back from grocery shopping on Thursday afternoon to find my key wouldn't work. I stood on my own front porch, holding bags of groceries, unable to get into my own home, the home where I'd lived for 25 years. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, saw me struggling with the lock and came over. "Margaret, dear, are you all right?" How do you explain to your neighbor that your own daughter has locked you out of your house? How do you put that into words without sounding insane? "Jessica changed the locks," I said simply. Mrs. Chen's expression shifted from confusion to horror. "She what?" "She inherited the house. She wants me to move out." "But this is your home." Yes, it was. It had been. Mrs. Chen insisted I come to her house while we figured out what to do. I called Jessica from her kitchen phone. "Jessica, you changed the locks?" "I told you I was taking possession of the property. I need to protect my investment. My clothes are in there, my photos, my personal belongings, everything I own. I'll have someone pack your things and drop them off wherever you're staying. Where I'm staying, I don't have anywhere to stay. Mom, that's not my problem to solve. Not her problem. Her homeless mother wasn't her problem to solve. Can I at least come get some clothes and necessities? Jessica sighed like I was asking for something unreasonable. I'll meet you there in an hour. You can take what you need for now. What I needed for now. Like I was a weekend guest who'd overstayed her welcome. An hour later, I stood in my own bedroom, packing a suitcase while my daughter watched from the doorway like a security guard. Just the essentials, she said. You can get the rest later once you've figured out your housing situation. I packed 2 suitcases with clothes, toiletries, medications, and a few photos. 40 years of life reduced to what could fit in 2 suitcases. What about Dad's things? I asked, looking at his dresser, still holding his clothes, his cologne, his reading glasses. I'll handle Dad's belongings appropriately. Appropriately. Not lovingly, not carefully, not with respect for the man who'd worn those clothes and used those glasses to read bedtime stories to her when she was small. Appropriately. I wanted to take his wedding ring, which I'd been wearing on a chain around my neck since the funeral, but I was too afraid to ask, too afraid she'd say no and take that away from me too. Where will you go? Jessica asked as I loaded my suitcases into my car. I don't know. There's a nice Days Inn about 10 miles south of here. Clean, affordable. A motel. She was suggesting I live in a motel. Jessica, I can't live in a motel indefinitely. Then you better start looking for permanent housing, shouldn't you? I drove away from my house, her house, and didn't look back. Couldn't look back. If I'd seen it in my rearview mirror, I think I would have broken down completely. The Days Inn was exactly what you'd expect from a roadside motel. Clean enough, but generic and depressing. I rented a room by the week because it was cheaper than daily rates. Room 247. A queen bed, a small table, 2 chairs, and a view of the parking lot. This was my life now. 67 years old, and everything I'd built was gone. I called Jessica once during that first week, hoping that maybe some distance had given her perspective. How are you settling in? She asked, like I was enjoying a vacation. Jessica, I can't stay in a motel forever. Have you looked at apartments or senior communities? I don't have enough money for a deposit on an apartment. Social Security doesn't start for another month. Silence on the other end. Jessica? Mom, I can't solve every problem for you. You're an adult. Figure it out. Click. She hung up on me. I sat in that motel room surrounded by everything I owned in the world and finally let myself cry. Not the dignified tears of grief I'd shed at Robert's funeral, but ugly, body-shaking sobs of complete despair. I cried for Robert, for the life we'd built together that was being dismantled like it had never mattered. I cried for Jessica, for the daughter I'd lost somewhere along the way to ambition and coldness. I cried for myself, for the choices I'd made and the trust I'd given to people who didn't deserve it. But mostly, I cried because I felt invisible, erased, like 40 years of love and sacrifice and dedication had been wiped away with a single sentence. Find somewhere else to die. The worst part wasn't the motel room or the uncertainty about my future. The worst part was the silence. No one called to check on me. No one seemed to notice I was gone. Jessica had made me disappear from my own life, and apparently nobody cared enough to ask where I'd gone. I understood finally what Robert had meant when he'd said the will had provisions, but I was too proud, too hurt, too lost in my own grief to call Mr. Harrison back and ask what those provisions were. I just existed in that motel room, day after day, watching the parking lot and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. 3 days. I'd been gone for 3 days when everything changed. On the 3rd day in that motel room, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. I'd been awake since 5, staring at the ceiling and listening to trucks rumble past on the highway outside my window. The caller ID showed Jessica's name, and for a moment, my heart jumped. Maybe she'd come to her senses. Maybe she was calling to apologize. Hello? Mom, I need to see you right now. Jessica's voice was high-pitched, panicked in a way I'd never heard before. Jessica, what's wrong? There's a problem with Dad's will. I need you to come to Mr. Harrison's office immediately. I sat up in the motel bed, confused. What kind of problem? Just come, okay? Please, Mom, I'm already on my way there. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my mind racing. Jessica hadn't said please to me in years, and now she was practically begging. I got dressed quickly, my hands shaking as I tried to process what could have gone wrong. Had there been a mistake in the will? Was there some legal issue with the inheritance? The drive to Mr. Harrison's office felt eternal. I kept replaying Jessica's panicked voice in my head. Whatever had happened, it was serious enough to make my composed, calculating daughter lose her cool completely. Mr. Harrison's secretary showed me into the same conference room where I'd sat 3 days earlier, watching my life get redistributed like poker chips. Jessica was already there, pacing behind her chair like a caged animal. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, and she kept checking her phone obsessively. "Mom, thank God you're here," she said when I walked in. The relief in her voice was palpable. "Jessica, what's going on?" Before she could answer, Mr. Harrison entered the room carrying a thick file folder. His expression was carefully neutral, but I caught something in his eyes, a mixture of professional concern and what might have been amusement. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for coming on such short notice," he said, settling into his chair. "Jessica called me this morning quite concerned about certain aspects of your husband's will." "What aspects?" I asked, looking between them. Mr. Harrison opened the folder and pulled out several documents. "Well, it seems Jessica has encountered some difficulties accessing certain accounts, and when she contacted the banks, they referred her back to me." Jessica jumped in, her words tumbling over each other. "They're saying I can't access Dad's accounts. The house deed has some kind of restriction on it. Nothing makes sense." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should go through the will again, this time in its entirety. As you'll recall, Jessica left rather abruptly during our last meeting." I remembered. She'd been so eager to catch her flight, so confident that she'd heard everything that mattered. "Mrs. Thompson," Mr. Harrison continued, "your husband was very specific about his wishes. The portion of the will we read the other day was indeed accurate. Jessica inherits the house, the business, and all financial assets, totaling approximately $33 million. Jessica relaxed slightly. "See? So what's the problem?" "The problem, Jessica, is that you didn't stay to hear the conditions attached to that inheritance." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What conditions?" Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. Mr. Harrison put on his reading glasses and picked up the will. "Let me read the relevant section in full." He cleared his throat and began, "To my beloved daughter, Jessica. I leave the house at 412 Maple Street, Thompson Construction Company, and all associated financial assets, with the following non-negotiable conditions. First, that my beloved wife, Margaret Thompson, shall remain in residence at 412 Maple Street for the duration of her natural life, with full access to all areas of the home and grounds. Second, that Margaret shall be cared for with dignity, love, and respect, befitting her role as my partner in building everything I am leaving behind. Third, that Jessica shall provide for Margaret's health, comfort, and well-being, ensuring she never wants for anything in her remaining years." I felt the blood drain from my face. Jessica had gone completely white. Mr. Harrison continued, "Should Margaret Thompson ever be displaced from her home, mistreated, or denied proper care and respect, the entire inheritance shall immediately transfer to St. Mary's Children's Hospital, leaving Jessica with nothing." The silence in the room was deafening. "Furthermore," Mr. Harrison added, "Robert included a specific clause addressing abandonment. If Margaret is ever forced to seek alternative housing due to Jessica's actions or negligence, this shall be considered grounds for immediate forfeiture of all inherited assets. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. No, that can't be right. I'm afraid it is. Your father was quite clear about his intentions. Mr. Harrison removed his glasses and looked directly at Jessica. He came to me several months before his death to add these specific provisions. He said, and I quote, "I need to make sure Margaret is protected after I'm gone. She gave up everything for our family, and I won't have her discarded like yesterday's newspaper." I started to cry, not from sadness this time, but from something that felt like vindication. Robert had known. Somehow, he'd seen this coming and protected me. "But she's not living in the house anymore," Jessica said desperately. "She moved out on her own." Mr. Harrison's eyebrows rose. "She moved out voluntarily?" "Yes, she decided the house was too big for her." "Mrs. Thompson," Mr. Harrison turned to me, "is this accurate? Did you voluntarily leave your home?" I looked at Jessica, saw the desperation in her eyes, the panic barely contained beneath her composed facade. Part of me wanted to save her. Part of me still loved the little girl she used to be. But I thought about the words she'd used. "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." I thought about the changed locks, the packed suitcases, the cold dismissal of 40 years of my life. "No," I said quietly. "I didn't leave voluntarily. Jessica told me I had 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. She said I was useless to her, and in her way. She changed the locks on the house and gave me an hour to pack some clothes." Mr. Harrison nodded grimly. "I see. And where are you living now?" "Room 247 at the Days Inn on Highway 9. Jessica made a strangled sound. "Mom, you're twisting what happened. I was trying to help you transition to a more appropriate living situation. By locking me out of my own home. It's not your home anymore." "Actually," Mr. Harrison interjected, "according to your father's will, it very much is her home, for life." Jessica slumped in her chair like all the air had gone out of her. "This can't be happening." "I'm afraid it is happening," Mr. Harrison said. "As of this moment, with Margaret having been displaced from the family home, the inheritance reverts to St. Mary's Children's Hospital." Wait! Jessica stood up abruptly. "Can't we fix this? Mom can move back home right now, today." The will stipulates that any displacement triggers the forfeiture clause. Your father was very concerned about exactly this scenario. Temporary reconciliation attempts motivated by financial considerations rather than genuine care. Jessica turned to me, and for the first time in years, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Mom, please. This is all a misunderstanding. Come home with me right now. We'll work everything out." I studied my daughter's face. The panic, the desperation, the sudden interest in my well-being. 3 days ago, I was useless. Today, I was essential. The only thing that had changed was her understanding of the financial consequences. "Jessica, why do you want me to come home?" Because you're my mother. Because I love you." "Do you? Do you really love me?" "Of course I do." "Then why did you tell me to find somewhere else to die?" Jessica's face crumpled. "I didn't mean it like that. I was stressed, overwhelmed. Dad's death, the business, everything happening so fast. You seemed very clear about what you meant. Mom, please, I made a mistake. People say things they don't mean when they're grieving." I looked at her, really looked at her. The expensive clothes, the manicured nails, the desperation masked as love. This wasn't grief talking. This wasn't stress. This was panic about losing $33 million. "Mr. Harrison," I said, "what happens now?" "Well, the forfeiture clause has been triggered. St. Mary's will be notified and the assets will begin the transfer process. It typically takes 30 to 60 days to complete." "But surely there's something we can do," Jessica pleaded. "Some way to contest this or appeal it?" Mr. Harrison shook his head. "Your father's will is ironclad. I helped him craft these specific provisions, and we anticipated potential challenges. There are no loopholes, no appeals process. The conditions were clear, and they've been violated. Jessica turned back to me, tears streaming down her face now. Mom, I'm begging you. Please don't let this happen. I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for how I acted. I need you to forgive me. Need. Not want. Need. Jessica, what exactly are you asking me to do? Come home. Move back into the house. We'll pretend this never happened. Pretend? We'll start over. Mother and daughter living together, taking care of each other. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Taking care of each other. You couldn't be bothered to take care of your dying father, but now you want to take care of me. That's not fair, isn't it? You visited him twice in 3 months. Twice. You spent more time on your phone than talking to him. You couldn't even stay for the complete will reading because you had a flight to catch. I was dealing with a lot. We were all dealing with a lot, Jessica. The difference is, some of us dealt with it together, and some of us ran away to New York and only came back when there was money involved. The words hung in the air between us. I'd never spoken to her like this before, never confronted her so directly about her selfishness. But something had shifted inside me during those 3 days in the motel room. Maybe it was hitting rock bottom, or maybe it was finally understanding what Robert had tried to tell me in his last days. So what happens now? Jessica asked in a small voice. I looked at Mr. Harrison. Is there anything preventing me from making decisions about my own future? No, Mrs. Thompson, you're free to live wherever you choose. And the inheritance? Has already been forfeited. That decision was made the moment you were displaced from your home. I nodded slowly, feeling something like peace settle over me for the first time in months. Jessica, I want you to listen to me very carefully. She looked up hopefully. I'm not coming home. Her face went white again. But Mom, I'm not coming home because it was never really my home, was it? It was your father's home, and now it's your home. But it was never mine. I was just maintenance staff. That's not true. Isn't it? You made that very clear 3 days ago. I was useless to you. I was in your way. You told me to find somewhere else to die. I apologized for that. No, Jessica, you apologized for getting caught. There's a difference. I stood up from the table, and something about the gesture felt final, like I was standing up from more than just a chair. Mr. Harrison, I'd like to make some arrangements regarding my husband's estate. Of course, Mrs. Thompson. What can I help you with? I want to ensure that St. Mary's Children's Hospital receives everything as quickly as possible. And I want to be involved in how the funds are used. Mom, you can't be serious, Jessica whispered. I turned to look at her one last time. My daughter, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, celebrated every achievement with. The young woman I'd sacrificed my career for, my dreams for, my entire identity for. Jessica, your father left you $33 million with one simple condition. Treat me with love and respect. You couldn't manage that for 3 days. I can do it now. I can change. You're 38 years old. If you haven't learned to love your family by now, you're not going to learn because of money. But this is my inheritance. Dad meant for me to have it. Your father meant for you to earn it. You didn't. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. You know what the saddest part is, Jessica? If you had just asked me to downsize, to find a smaller place, to make changes because you genuinely cared about my well-being, I probably would have said yes. If you had approached this with love instead of greed, with compassion instead of calculation, we could have figured something out together. We still can. No, we can't. Because this isn't about the house or the money. This is about who you are when you think nobody's watching. This is about what you do when you have power over someone weaker than you. And what you did was show me exactly who my daughter really is. I opened the door. Mom, please, you're destroying my entire future. I stopped, my hand on the doorframe. Jessica, I raised you for 18 years. I gave you everything, opportunities, education, love, support. I sacrificed my career, my dreams, my identity to give you the best possible start in life. You had your entire future handed to you on a silver platter. I turned to face her one last time, and the moment you had the chance, you threw me away like garbage. So no, sweetheart, I'm not destroying your future. I'm just letting you live with the consequences of the choices you made when you thought you could get away with them. I walked out of that office and didn't look back. 6 months later, I was standing in the children's ward at St. Mary's Hospital, watching nurses distribute toys that had been purchased with funds from Robert's estate. The transformation was remarkable. New equipment, expanded facilities, a healing garden where sick children could play outside. "Mrs. Thompson, this is incredible," Dr. Sarah Martinez, the head of pediatrics, said as we watched a little boy with leukemia laugh as he played with a therapy dog. "The Robert Thompson Wing is going to help thousands of children over the years." I smiled, feeling Robert's presence somehow. This is what he would have wanted, not just the money, but the purpose behind it. Children getting the care they needed, families being supported during their darkest hours, hope being restored where it had been lost. My husband always said that our real legacy wouldn't be what we accumulated, but what we gave back, I told her. He sounds like he was a wonderful man. He was, and he was smart enough to know that some people have to earn their inheritance, while others are just born deserving it. I'd moved into a small apartment near the hospital, partly so I could be involved in overseeing the foundation that had been established with Robert's money, and partly because I wanted to be useful again. I volunteered 3 days a week, reading to children, helping families navigate insurance paperwork, organizing fundraising events. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose beyond being someone's wife or mother. Jessica had tried to contact me several times in the months following the will reading. Flowers, cards, phone calls that I didn't answer. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd had to declare bankruptcy, that her consulting firm had let her go when her expected inheritance disappeared, that she'd moved back to Chicago and was living in a studio apartment. I felt sorry for her, but not guilty. She was 48 years old enough to rebuild, to learn from her mistakes, to become a better person if she chose to. The money might have been gone, but her education, her intelligence, her potential were all still there. The question was whether she'd use this experience to grow or to stay bitter. One evening in December, almost a year after Robert's death, I was decorating a Christmas tree in the hospital lobby when I saw a familiar figure walk through the entrance. Jessica. She looked different, thinner, older, her expensive clothes replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. She saw me and stopped, uncertainty flickering across her face. For a moment, we just looked at each other across the lobby. Then she walked over. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Jessica. I heard you volunteer here now." 3 days a week, sometimes more during the holidays." She nodded, looking around at the decorations, the children's artwork on the walls, the families gathered in the seating area. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "What you've done here, what Dad's money has done. It's what your father would have wanted." "I know." She was quiet for a long moment. "I've been thinking about what you said, about earning things versus being born deserving them." I continued hanging ornaments, not sure where this conversation was heading. "I got a job," she said, "teaching business classes at a community college. It doesn't pay much, but I like it. The students remind me of who I used to be before I became so focused on accumulating things." "That sounds fulfilling." "It is." She paused. "Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I destroyed something precious, and I know I can't undo that. But I want you to know that I understand now. What I lost wasn't just money. It was you. And you were worth more than any inheritance." I stopped decorating and looked at her. Really looked at her. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like humility. The calculating coldness had been replaced by what appeared to be genuine remorse. "Why are you telling me this, Jessica?" "Because I love you, And because I spent so many years taking that for granted that I forgot how to show it. And now I'd like to try to remember, if you'll let me. I studied my daughter's face, looking for signs of manipulation, of another angle, another play for sympathy or money. But what I saw was something I hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability. Real, unguarded vulnerability. Jessica, I'm not going to pretend that everything is fine between us. What you did, what you said, that hurt me deeply. And it showed me parts of your character that I'm still processing. She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. But, I continued, I also know that people can change. People can grow. People can learn from their mistakes and become better versions of themselves. Do you think I can? I reached into my purse and pulled out a small wrapped present. I bought this for you months ago for Christmas. I wasn't sure I'd ever give it to you, but... She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a simple silver necklace with a small pendant, a heart inscribed with the words, "Love is patient." "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Your father gave me one just like it on our first Christmas together. He said love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every day, a commitment to be patient with each other's flaws and to help each other become better people." Jessica fastened the necklace around her neck with shaking hands. "I'd like to learn how to make that choice," she said, "if you'll teach me." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, I saw glimpses of the little girl who used to make me construction paper hearts and tell me I was the best mommy in the world. "We can start slowly," I said. "Maybe coffee sometime, and talking. Really talking, not just about logistics or problems, but about life, about who we are and who we want to become. I'd like that very much. And Jessica, this isn't about getting anything back. The money is gone, and it's staying gone. This is about whether two people who love each other can find their way back to each other. I understand. And Mom, I don't want the money back. I want something much more valuable than that." "What's that?" "I want my mother back, and I want to become the daughter she deserves." As we stood there in the hospital lobby, surrounded by Christmas decorations and the gentle hum of healing taking place, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Not hope that everything would go back to the way it was. That was impossible. But hope that something new could grow from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Hope that love, patience, and forgiveness could create something even stronger than what we'd lost. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money. Sometimes it's learning who truly loves you and learning how to love them back.